Oh yeah.
Okay, sounds good.
My bronchitis is starting to act up a little bit.
Yeah, thanks again for doing this.
Oh man, no, thank you. It's been kind of like a little talk of the town, I see.
Oh, good, good.
Quite a few
Glad to hear it.
people have said, "Hey man, I'm looking forward to this."
Good. We'll give it about 20 more seconds. All right. Good morning. Good late morning. Indy Chamber coming to you with another virtual town hall this morning with our special guest, Amp Harris from Amp Harris Productions. One of the most interesting people that you will meet, certainly in the city, definitely in our music community. And what we want to do this morning is just just have a conversation with Amp about his life. Amp's also a person who's got some I'm going to say inspiring thoughts on how we can cultivate hope in what's been a difficult 2020, how we can build relationships with people whose life circumstances are different from us. And I would be remiss if I didn't mention Amp's massive growing toy giveaway every year this year at Indianapolis Motor Speedway. So we're going to just have a conversation with Amp about his life, about ways that all of us can cultivate hope and relationships in 2020, and how we can support this incredible event that he's now put on for several years. Amp Harris, welcome to the program. Thanks for being with us this morning.
Brother Michael Huber, it's a pleasure, man. I'm glad to be here. Glad for the invitation. I think this is a much needed conversation that one you and I have had offline. That this was your idea because of the type of conversation we've had. So I appreciate you having me.
Well, I appreciate it. And again, a shout out to Indiana Pacers and Rick Fusen. Part one of the
Rick
reasons that we know each other,
Fusion.
Rick, is through Rick, and the Pacers are doing, obviously such important work. And Amp, it's almost like I don't know where to start. You've had, as we mentioned in the bio for this program, you manage national artists, including the great Stephanie Mills. But as I'm working backward, you've been a DJ, a promoter. Philanthropy is a big part of your life. I think, before we get into some of those areas, I do want to ask you about your kind of your younger days. I know you've got, New York roots and Indianapolis roots, and just kind of early experiences. And can you see kind of the seeds of the Amp Harris today if you look back at your childhood and experiences growing up?
Yes and no. First of all, let me forewarn people. I kind of have like a bronchitis flare up this morning. Been doing Zooms all morning, so my throat is kind of sore. So bear with me on that. But that's a good question. I mean, early on, man, I grew up in a single parent home. Basically, grew up in the church. My family is deeply rooted into our faith, and so it was kind of like odd. In the sense that growing up with a single parent mother who basically only knew the Bible. Yes, she understood how to survive and how to live, but we were taught principles through the Bible. And musically, it was something that was already in my family. My sisters sang, um, my mother, my aunts, they all sang in church. And when I was younger, I spent a lot of time. I was born in Indianapolis, but I spent a lot of time in New York. And I was kind of like basically cultivating my chops, which I didn't know would lead me to where we are today. But it's really funny because when I started DJing, and if my mom was on here, she would really like wouldn't want me to tell this story. But When I started, Mike, I don't know if I even shared this part with you. Um, when I started playing secular music, as my mom would call it, and she called it the devil's music. You will not be playing the devil's music in my house. That consisted of the Sugar Hill Gang. That consisted of Rick James and the Commodores. But to her, we grew up on Albertina Walker. We grew up on the late great gospel artist, the Williams brothers. So it was a funny story because I look back on it and my mom and I laugh to this very day, Mike, because uh, I would use an old mantra from my friend Kumo D, how you like me now? So the devil's music kind of planned out to be a great thing because that's what basically opened the door for my life today.
And I think especially for our younger people watching today, you were growing up, correct me if I'm wrong, at a time when hip hop was still an early emerging, almost fringe kind of music. And I know, and I'm not just saying this, you look a lot younger than you are. I know that health and wellness is a big part of your life. So people, some of our viewers can be like, not necessarily believing that, but it's not like it is in 2020 where hip hop culture is literally everywhere. I mean, tell me, correct me if I'm wrong. This was a new kind of emerging music when you were a kid, right?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, it was so new that, and it was really weird because hip hop derived basically just like all music from gospel music. But in particular, hip hop, back in the day derived from New York. Cool Herc and guys like that started the hip hop sound. But I mean, if you really think about it, you think about James Brown. He was rapping even then, but it didn't have a title to it. It was just
Yep.
a part of who he was. So for me to look at when I first started looking at radio, it was interesting because in Indianapolis, being in the Midwest, WTLC was anti hip hop music for years because it really it wasn't a phenomenon across the country. It was just
Yeah.
primarily on the East Coast. So to see where it is today, and it is a $1 billion industry, it has made billionaires just staying focused on hip hop. It's a beautiful thing to see. It's a great evolution for the music.
So if this were a 3-hour discussion and you've got the chapters in your life are definitely worthy of that type of a discussion. We'd have a chance to go into the details, but it is well documented, from the story that Bob Kravitz wrote about you 2 years ago and others. It's well documented that as you are growing up, developing more of an interest in music, you are witness to incidents of violence as a young person.
Mm-hmm.
And I remember I knew you a little bit, reading the Bob Kravitz story 2 years ago, and thinking, oh my gosh. And I have to ask that because I know that, and you've said that it fuels your philanthropy and your commitment to kids. I guess, can I ask you to reflect on that a little bit? Because I know that's a big part of the story as you're growing up.
Oh man, where do you want me to start?
Yeah,
you know, uh, if you're making reference to the racial content of it, I just want to make sure,
yeah,
I answered the correct
yeah,
question. Yeah, it started early for me, man, because, my entire life, growing up in the inner city, and it's really difficult because if you are part of a community, you typically only know that community.
yeah,
And a lot of people, a lot of young Black men and women, they didn't have the means to be able to travel. And that was the beauty for me because I've always had elders in my life, if I may, men that were mentors, and I always gravitated to wisdom from older people. And so, because of that, my phone is ringing. Let me turn it off. Because of that, it was a situation where I was able to see things from a different lens. I was able to understand that my life was different because of where I lived at. That didn't make me different as a person, um, So with hip hop and just being, and it's not even, I'm not even going to use hip hop. I'm going to use a black man. Just being a black man in the inner city, you see violence. You see the inequities from equality versus equity. You see the disparagement from how white people are treated, especially you're talking about a kid who was part of the product of the first busing system.
Yeah.
So, growing up on the east side of Indianapolis, along with my good friend Mike Epps, you know, we were part of the busing system. I was bused to Decatur Central,
Wow.
and that was a 45-minute to 60-minute ride each way. Um, so my real first encounter that I can say, it started early, but it wasn't so blatant because I was surrounded by people of color, people that look like me, people that talk like me, people that had the same mannerisms as I did. Once I went to Decatur Central, it was 33 of us in my senior graduating class. Uh, I played basketball in high school, participated in sports. The one thing that really shook me to the core was going to school one day and watching this big flame. If anybody know what Decatur Central is, you got to get on 465, and it's on the west side of Indianapolis. And this story never really went public, but I've always heard of the stories. My mom is from Greenwood, Mississippi, so I've always heard of the stories. But and then of course, what we saw on television, the angles that media wanted us to see when we talk about Black history. For me, it's still kind of emotional because here I am going to a school that I didn't choose to go to, um, where the powers that be decide, let's give these Black kids a better opportunity by shifting them away from their culture, shifting them away from people who understand them, shifting them away from people who want them to be there, shifting them away from being celebrated, but now in a process we're being tolerated because we're going to schools that we again didn't sign up to go to. So fast forward, I'm on a basketball team. It's four of us, four Black guys on a basketball team, rather from JV to varsity. And, I was a pretty good basketball player at a young age, had to be taught the ropes because, playing inner city basketball to corporate basketball, I mean, to county basketball is a different kind of way. It's like Hoosiers versus the Harlem Globetrotters. But it was fun. I had a wonderful coach, Coach Ogilvy, and it was an amazing time for me because I was able again to cultivate relationships because I was brought up with older people teaching me how to conduct myself. Um, the struggle was this day, and it's really hard. Coming off 465, and you can see our school off in the near sight, but there was these bright lights that was uncommon. And keep in mind, we're in the dead of winter, so it's 6 o'clock in the morning. It's dark, pitch dark. So you can see these lights forecasting in the sky. And we're all like, whoa, what is that? Like, man, somebody looked like a fire or something. Well, unbeknownst to us, it was a fire. The fire was in our schoolyard at the entry of Decatur Central High School. And it was a flaming fire, perfectly carved out as a cross that said, you're not, niggas not welcome. We pull up in the schoolyard in utter shock. Um, and at that moment, I just was enraged. I was shocked. I was embarrassed. I felt like the stories of my grandmother and my grandfather and my uncle being hung from a tree. Uh, it just shook me. And the people at Decatur Central didn't know how to act. They didn't know what to do. You know, at the end of the day, again, we're being somewhere where we're tolerated, not celebrated. So now it creates a tension that was already there, but now, Mike, it was brought to life.
Yeah.
Where it was so bad that one of my friends, because I was a popular student at Decatur Central, I was already DJing to my peers that my neighborhood. I would DJ at St. Peter Claver Center off of 30th and Fall Creek. I would leave my basketball games from Decatur Central. We would be playing Mooresville and, Martinsville and Whitestown. So it was tough. That was my first experience. And it caused me, Mike, to create my first civil duty to protest. I quit the basketball team because of that.
Wow. Did it make a difference? Did it change the conversation among people close to you and people in the community?
The Decatur Central community, or back in
did your personal protest have an impact?
Yes, it did. It had an impact to the point where I had the superintendent of Decatur Township come to a meeting. Wow. We had homeschool advisors. And it was, and I took it a step further because I even protested the fact that our women, our cheerleaders, Black girls that were trying out for cheerleading, none of them could make the team.
Yeah.
And which made absolutely no sense to me, just naturally, athletically, we're just gifted in certain areas as African Americans. And one thing we know how to do is dance. So to be told and watch these young ladies who practiced and became disciplined at the process, just like I had to as a basketball player. So yeah, it created, again, we had a brawl in front of my locker where one of my friends, we laugh and joke about it today, but it was exactly what we're dealing with today in the George Floyd movement. It is exactly what's happening in 2020. So a lot of that is really fresh, and it has actually made me become more aggressive in terms of my activist role and just making sure that we fight for equality and equity.
Yeah. One of the things is I think about the experience you describe, it's like, and this is the reason that I, appreciate our conversations and a lot of the advice you've given me is you have in you the activist, and yet there's another part of your life that is very much like you're one of the people who's credited with really helping hip hop music go much mainstream. Okay. In Indianapolis and in other cities. So is it accurate to say, you've got a part of your life that's pushing for change, but there's another part of your life where you're definitely broadening, your relationships. Is that accurate?
Yeah, I mean, it's always been that, but I didn't know that because I was just being me. At the end of the day, I never set out to be, I think activism was always in me first and foremost, but I don't believe me being, my life has transitioned from being a DJ to being a business owner to being a promoter, to being a philanthropic person. And it was never something like that. I always tell people, I get a lot of young people saying, I want to be on your level when I grow up. And to me, I don't know what that means because I've never done anything in my life for accolades. It's just things that naturally, organically happen. And I believe in my relationships across the entertainment business, the sports business, whether if it's in political business, dealing with people like yourself, Rick, my friend Rick Fusion from the Pacers, Pete Ward from the Colts, Mark Miles from IMS, and my wonderful friend who I love dearly, Allison Millington, who is on my Mount Rushmore. It's in Indianapolis, it's allowed that to happen, but that's across the country. So these are things that just happened in my life.
There's a story there. We have a lot of business owners I know tuning in this morning via Facebook and Facebook Live and Zoom. Can you again, it deserves a long, a long conversation, but that progression that you just described, DJ, concert promoter, business owner, and that progression, can you touch on some of the pivotal points in that progression, and like I'm just fascinated to know, when did you figure out as a DJ, oh, I could turn this into a business. Oh, and now I'm promoting concerts regionally, and now I'm promoting concerts nationally. What were some of the keys in that progression?
Well, see, again, in my head, you would have to, we would have to get some of my friends on, because I
Yeah.
really don't have a clock in my head, Mike, that where, I know when I started off as a young person, again, the music in me, because I started off as a young person, I was playing drums. A lot of people think my name, Amp, it derived from me being in the music business or the radio business. Had nothing to do with that. That is just something that, a nickname that I've had since I knew any better. I used to play drums with my older brother, who played bass guitar, and he had a group when we lived in the projects, and I taught myself how to play drums.
Wow.
Even as a DJ, I work with some of the greatest, and even my relationships in New York, Cool Red Alert, DJ Kid Capri, Grandmaster Flash, watching those guys back then, Jam Master Jay from Run DMC, watching those guys back then, it was easy for me to pick up. And then I started working with, legends in Indianapolis in the DJ world, Tony Lamont, Thomas Sparkle Sox Griffin, who is somebody that, is one of my big mentors. He and I started doing parties, and he brought me on, and I would sit in his house and literally just go through his records. I don't have that photogenic memory like Mike. You are
Yeah.
someone in music who can say this name, this artist, and they put this album out in this year. I know none of that. I don't know album titles. I literally went off of feel and
Yeah.
hearing. So from a
Yeah.
DJ side, it was just again another, and I use this word quite a bit, another organic way for me to just be able to pick up and match up. So
Yeah.
be able to pick up a song and match another song with that song. Then
Yeah.
from the as a visionary, I've just started giving myself credit for that, Mike, just probably within the last 5 years,
Absolutely.
considering myself as a visionary. So when you go from DJing and watching, bringing some of those New York ideas, I used to DJ at the St. Peter Claver Center off of 30th and Sutherland. And it was primarily for, it was a citywide event, and people from the North Side, East Side, they would come. And one thing that I did that Thomas Griffin thought I was crazy, I said, man, I'm gonna make me a 6-foot to 12-foot stage. So I created a stage in the Claver Center where they had like a little riser that was like 3 to 4 feet. What I did, Mike, I took 2 8-foot tables and I stacked them on top of each other. So now I'm standing over the crowd 20 feet in the air. Then I take another 8-foot table and I stand on top of that. I had fog machines and strobe lights. And so I started my own concert as a DJ. And so people really, they gravitated to that. And then, Thomas and I started what we call the Amp Harris and the Network, where we network with high school students. And what I saw from that was we taught, and this is what's missing in today, when we segue into some of the stuff with the law and how people are perceptualizing things. Images are so important. And one thing I've always learned was, as it related to me as a DJ, I had to create an image of me that was different than any of my counterparts. I wasn't, and I always say this, I'm not the greatest at any one particular thing. I think I'm pretty good at a lot of different things. So I was a DJ who scratched just enough to get by. But what I learned to do from the New York style, I learned how to talk on a microphone. I had someone, Thomas Griffin, taught me how to enunciate and understand it's not what you say, but how you say it.
Yeah.
Then from that, I started to realize I was a brand that can motivate people and mobilize people. So
Yeah.
then I started in 1993, I started my company, Amp Harris Productions. My first major concert was Public Enemy at Market Square Arena. Lost a lot of money, but I learned a lot. And so from that, my East Coast relationships, because again, keep in mind, East Coast rap was so prevalent then. I was able to bring a lot of East Coast rappers to Indianapolis, which was very rare back then.
Yep.
So then, I got asked to work at WTLC and start a mix show that is still current, which is called The Basement Party. And so I started because I never wanted to be, and a lot of people don't know this, when I worked in radio, I never wanted to be a full-time DJ because it prevented me from traveling around the country the way that I was at an early age. I was in Cancun every year with Puff Daddy, with 50 Cent, with Busta Rhymes, with, doing Biggie Smalls, Jay-Z. That was my clique back then. So I've just been, my life, Mike, has just been a complete blessing, man, that I can't even really describe it because I did it from my heart.
Yeah. I think so. There's a message in here, especially for a lot of our business people tuning in, that I want to really hone in on. One of them is something, and you've influenced me in this way, which is focus on the next thing, focus on the process. Don't focus on the accolades, and the accolades will come. And clearly, you're an example of that. I do want to press on one thing though, because like and we do this with a lot of we counsel a lot of our businesses. This, you've never been the star out front. You've always been the person who's pulling the party together, pulling the radio program together, the concert together. If some of these national artists that you've worked with, Stephanie Mills, Mike Epps, any number of the musicians you named, if you were to ask them, what's the secret sauce that Amp Harris brings, what do you think they would say, just for fun?
It's really interesting because Stephanie and I talk about this quite a bit, and not just Stephanie. Dougie Fresh, Big Daddy Kane. Patti LaBelle once put her hand on my chest and said, "You are a very organic person," and it almost made me faint because I didn't really understand. But it came to me because I was driving the car, I was moving the towels, I was getting food. She didn't know I was the promoter. She thought that I was just this young guy that was running around until, one of my friends was like, no, he's a promoter. So, I think the humility is something that I was born with because of my mother, because understanding my superhero is my mom. My foundation is my mother. The way that I look at myself, Mike, when I try to discern right from wrong, is my mother. So for me, man, it was always, this is a blessing to be here. I've worked with athletes from, my relationship with the Indiana Pacers, from Haywood Workman, Reggie Miller, Dale Davis, Antonio Davis, all the way up to, Miles Turner today, and everybody in between, Paul George, George Hill, over to the Colts, Edgerrin James, Reggie Wayne, T.Y. Hilton, Robert Mathis, Andrew Luck, Jacoby Brissett. It is a story that people ask me, how do you get these people to like you? And you and I talked about this. I don't know if you can get anybody to like you, because eventually, even in business, what I've always told people as a marketing person and as a person in PR, you can give me a gimmick for 5 days, and it's 7 days in a week. On day 6, I'm gonna start to become a little bit more aware of your gimmick. Day 7, I'm done with your gimmick. So it's either you be 100% organic and be authentic, even in your business practices. I don't believe in this theory that a lot of business owners and managers live by. Between 8 and 5, I'm this way. Between 5 and 8, I'm that way. Excuse my French. That's BS. Either you are a good person 24 hours a day, and there are some rocky roads in that 24 hours, but you eventually level back out to your foundation of who you are,
Yeah.
or you just are a messed up person and you're afraid to look yourself in the mirror.
Yeah.
That is the evolution and the 2020 mantra of what we're dealing with today.
Yeah. That's there's so much to talk about, but I do want to part of why we wanted to have this conversation with you today and get your thoughts is so COVID and its impacts, the killing of George Floyd, and which led to heightened awareness of racism, racial inequities, things like that in 2020. Very divisive political environment. All those things have just been compounding. And, you and I talk about these things, and I'm going to try to characterize it. Tell me if I do accurately. You are one who is very, emphatic that there's only a chance for America and Indianapolis to grow out of this successfully if everybody is committed to developing relationships and true friendships with people who are not like them. Did I say that accurately? And if not, how would you say it in your words?
Somewhat. I don't think we have to be friends first and foremost. I just think that we have to come from the same foundation. I tell people that there's a big difference between equality and equity. Equality basically suggests everyone should get the same amount. The problem with that is not everyone is starting from the same place. So if you're starting with privilege, that's not equality, because I'm always going to be behind. I think what's needed is all of us equally getting the same resources and support. The resources and support that people need, not what they want. Let me clarify that.
Yeah.
So, at that point, everyone can be equal because we're now on equal footing and we're competing on equal footing. Equitable equity to me means we all end up in the same place. So, I shared this with you once before, Mike, where I have a way of life, the way that I think. And, my processes in the way that I think don't necessarily line up for a lot of corporate America people. But I believe that my theory in life is I go by the 5-in-1 approach. It's 5 lanes on a highway and we got one exit. I don't care how you get to that exit, but if you don't want to come outside of your lane, if your lane is white and white with privilege, then you have no desire to see me in the next lane.
Yeah.
Because you think the world that you live in only speaks to your lane. So if you're not willing to come outside of your comfort zone to even do what Mike is doing, I told my friend Rick Fusion this. Rick, in this moment, and I call it the George Floyd moment, where companies are writing checks, people are getting to paint signs on the streets. The NFL decided to do the National Negro Anthem the first week of the season. That has nothing to do with George Floyd. That has nothing to do with John Lewis. That has nothing to do with Martin Luther King, Malcolm X. All of those men had something in common. They all did work to change the understanding of equality and equity.
Yeah.
The 5-in-1 approach, Mike, is each lane represents something different. Lane 1 is race. Lane 2 is education. Lane 3 is
Yep.
finances. Lane 4 is job opportunity. Lane 5 is housing. And we can keep going on, health and so forth.
Yep.
If you're not willing to cross and understand and learn about those other lanes, when you get to that exit, you're going to have the same mindset you had, and
Yep.
you've been driving for 24 hours.
Yeah. And there's a message that you have influenced me, and I want to reflect this back. So there's still a lot of America that doesn't know we have a problem. There's still a lot of America that's like me, who is realizing I'm like unlearning a lot of the history that I learned or I thought I knew in present time, right? And there's a lot, so there's a lot of our community that's like me, and there's a message that you deliver, which is, I'm going to see if I get this right, something like, if you're in your lane of privilege, that to get out of that lane, it's not charity necessarily. If you get out of that lane, you can and break out of your privileged point of view, you can experience a greater richness than what you knew before. So it's not just a thing that you do to be charitable. Now, again, I'm paraphrasing conversations we've had. Is that, am I close? Can you talk about that?
Basically, I'm going to say something that I think a lot of people, and I was kind of touching on it a little bit. Where I come from as a Black man, single parent home, youngest of 8, didn't go to college. But I'm sitting here talking to Michael Hubert, who is the president of the Indy Chamber, with one of my friends, Rick Fusion, who is the president of the Indiana Pacers Sports and Entertainment. And I don't know who else is on here listening. What I do know is I have privilege because of who I know, some of the work that I have done. But I also understand when I sit at an Indiana Pacer game with my privilege, that I love to sit and represent my Indiana Pacers, or when I'm able to go, and I'm just speaking of things that we in Indiana can all relate to, sports. When I'm able to go to a Colts game, and I'm able to stand on a football field because of my privilege, whether if I'm with Edgerrin James or Reggie Wayne, Dwight Freeney, it doesn't matter. Amp Harris has privilege that a lot of young Black men will never, ever have. My privilege is such, I am able to pick up the phone, call my friends Mark Miles, Allison Millington at the Indy 500, Indianapolis Motor Speedway, and say, hey guys, I do a toy giveaway. Because of COVID, we can't be inside. I have an idea that will allow people to look like me, and some people that don't look like me, but socially and economically come from where I come from, to be able to see a landmark like the Indianapolis Motor Speedway from the inside, that they will never, and that's what's important to me. So why do I say that? Because we have to get white people to understand, in order for you to really want to make a difference with your privilege, sometimes it's more than just your money. I love all of the involvement that organizations are doing. The Lilly Endowment wrote a check for $100 million. That's wonderful, because the Lilly Endowment has billions of dollars. So for AMP, I get passionate about this because in order for you to make a difference, you have to become comfortable being uncomfortable.
Yeah.
What does that mean? That means Indianapolis Motor Speedway, allow me to allow people to get on your track because they've never done it. And this is going to give them hope, because they see a Black man like Amp Harris sitting on a call with you right now, having this conversation, and I don't fit the stereotype. I'm not part of the mainstream Indianapolis corporate America organization. I'm blessed to be in the same rooms with a lot of those people, my peers that I know and love. But Mike, we have to make sure we understand it's use the other lanes to
Yep.
get to that exit.
And
Don't
it's,
just
yeah.
get what you
Yeah.
have privilege of. White people think that, well, Amp, you shouldn't say anything because look at you, look at your life, look at all this stuff you're talking about.
Yep.
All the things that I'm talking about is for me to be able to use my privilege to bless those that don't have the privilege that Amp has, let alone Reggie Wayne, who's sitting over my
Yeah.
shoulder, or all of these guys or these men here. Because, Mike, we need people like you who are willing. And again, I got to commend you because you wanted to do this. This is not something Amp
Yeah.
doesn't do that. I didn't say, hey,
Well,
Mike, let's get online to do this.
yeah, right. Well, it brings up a point though, and this is like, so it's like, as you know, first time we met, I was nervous as hell because I'd been going to your concerts for a decade, and I was
Right.
like, but again, it's all relative. It's not the same as what you're expressing, but it's all relative because I was like, why would this guy even want to talk to me? But then it's like, no, wait, stop, get out of my typical right business chamber, and that's that's been a great thing. Ron Miner, shout out to Ron Miner. Amp, some of your fans are commenting in the chat. I love that. Look at what Ron Miner, DJ Indiana Jones, has done to broaden people's understanding of hip hop and Treese and everything that brings to our community. And so I think one of the messages to folks tuning in this morning is like, that was a small, that was a short distance that I had to travel. You know what I mean? To be like, we need to develop a bigger relationship with Amp Harris and everything he's doing. And that was actually a short distance we had to travel. And it's like, to all of our people tuning in, it's like, who do you know, or who's already 2 degrees removed from your circles, you know what I mean, to start to broaden that perspective. But I don't want to downplay Amp, because I know this drives your work in the community. As a lot of us, especially white people, are going on this journey of discovery, trying to figure out how can we make more of a difference, there's a fact that thousands of youth in our community believe that no one cares for them. Like, and this is where, Dennis Bland, who's the CEO of CLD, he told me like 5 years ago, and like my heart sank. He said, well, really, one of the first things we need to do is convince our young people that their life has value. And I was like, I mean, and I know, again, I know that's something that drives your work and drives your philanthropy. Can you share a little bit about that?
I mean, at the end of the day, you're looking at a product of, you can do pretty much anything that is within your destiny. This path wasn't that I'm on right now. I was set up to fail. Like most Black men that come from the inner city. That's the part that I just gave this definition of equality versus equity. If I'm put, is real simple. We don't want revenge for 400 years of slavery. We don't want revenge for George Floyd watching a man put his knee on his neck for 8 minutes and 46 seconds. What we want is respect. We don't want to just somebody to give us a handout. What we want is to be able to have the same opportunities. If I'm a college graduate, Ron Miner is my man. I love Ron Miner. But what I do know about Ron Miner, I gave a white prominent DJ an opportunity in Indianapolis that catapulted him through great lengths. And some people on here may know who I'm talking about. And Paul Bunyan, a white guy, came up to me one day, and man, I'm this, and this. I didn't look at Paul Bunyan as a white guy. I looked at Paul Bunyan as a good DJ. And I told Paul, you're not going to embarrass me if you're terrible, if you suck. You're going to embarrass yourself. Why do I bring that up? Because if we get the same opportunity, Black people don't look at white people and say, we don't like you because we're white, you're white. We have a problem with white people because white people look at us and say, you're a problem before the door is even open. We don't get the same opportunities. What AMP tries to provide is hope. What I try to do with my privilege is bring my, whether if it's Michael Jordan or if it's LeBron James, I try to use my relationships to show young Black men and women, Tamika Catchings, Reggie Wayne, George Hill. I try to show young Black men and women, you too can be this person, not just as in sports. I do a program, Mike, that I never shared with you called Making the Right Play in Life. I just had it's on my YouTube channel, Amp Harris. But I just had George Hill, Miles Turner, Robert Mathis, and Jacoby Brissett speaking to 200 inner city high school student athletes. And it was sponsored by Indiana Black Expo and the Lilly Foundation. And we talked about what does it take to be a pro in life, not to try to make you become a pro as an athlete. There are so many young Black men and women that go to college, that get degrees. But the moment they look at someone's application and their name doesn't measure up to Tom or Mary or Alice, then they're automatically pushed to the back of the line. But they've gone through the same process. So for AMP, we're fighting for equality. We're fighting for equity. We don't want you to give us anything. But the problem that we deal with in society today, Mike, is there is a fear factor that African Americans and people of color intimidate those that have gotten jobs because of their privilege. Amp Harris is a threat to a lot of people in my industry, in sports, in music, not because I want that person's job, but because I'm able to do their job and it looks easy. That's a threat. Mike Huber sat with me and said, Amp, I want to learn. Yes, you have a desire and a love for music, but Mike, because of your love for music, you and I are sitting here talking about making the right play in life.
Right.
So AMP wants to be able to make sure people of privilege, corporate America people who you deal with every day that I don't know, and someone may not have a clue who I am, which is fine. But what they need to understand is I'm not advocating for Amp Harris. I'm advocating for the people that look like Amp Harris.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So
Absolutely.
That's important to me.
Yeah. So Amp, I want to take one question and then I want to give ample time to the toy drive. But the one question, Denny Sutherland from Cripe, thank you, Denny, for writing in. Thank you for being such a great influence on me personally and our organization. And by the way, I do want to Mamie Ware, very kind comments. Jackie Lewis from State Fair, Craig Von Dalen, Andrea Broxton, thank you so much. Denny Southern, I want to take this one question before we talk about the toy drive, and that is regarding white privilege. He says, I'm a huge believer that being born white, regardless of social economics, has great privilege. Having white privilege is about being born white. I'm white. You know, and that's my question to you, Amp. You know, a lot of us, it's got a lot of us trying to get more real about this thing called white privilege. Those of us who are white are thinking about these things. When someone approaches you with this conversation, what do you tell them?
One, I can't change anybody. All I can do is continue to do the work that I do, but also I understand this. Privilege, again, as a Black man, I have a lot of privilege, but I also understand as a Black man, I don't have the same privilege as the white person that's sitting next to me. So I'll give you an example. When I go to a Pacer game, I get asked this question, who are you? Now, that white guy didn't get asked who he was. You must be somebody. And one time I turned around and I said to the person, my name is Amp Harris, what's yours? That's who I am. And my point is, Mike, white people have to become comfortable being uncomfortable.
Yeah.
White people have to understand that what we're fighting for in America today is not a handout. This man in 1968 was an athlete for the United States of America. A lot of people still don't know why he did this. This was in 1968.
Yeah.
In 2020, we're still doing the same thing. We're still being oppressed by the same people. You know, I want people to understand you don't get a pat on the back for doing your job. If you write checks every single day for a living, that doesn't, in this climate, I need you to now go on 30th and Post Road and help clean up 30th and Post Road. Then I'm gonna pat you on the back.
Yeah.
That goes for Black people or white people, but white people in particular, because that's the privilege. If you see somebody, if you're president of an organization, hire more minorities. Don't just create positions in 2020, diversity, the positions for 2020, but then that person has 20 other people that they got to answer to.
Yeah.
That ain't a diversity movement. That is a diversity stalemate.
Yeah.
So what I want people to understand is use your privilege to go outside of your comfort. You know, again, kudos to my partners at the Indianapolis Motor Speedway for allowing me to use people, to allow people that will never get a chance to see the inside of IMS to actually ride around the track. It's not about, and we can segue into the toys because it all plays the same thing, Mike. It's not about the Amp Harris and Friends toy giveaway.
Yeah.
I do things, Mike, as a marketing PR person. I understand magnets. So that's why I use a lot of my celebrity friends. Yeah. I am teaching young athletes from the Pacers, from the Colts, and around the country. You have more, just like I would a president of an organization. There is more to you than what you do to gain your check.
Yeah, absolutely.
You know, so with the toy giveaway, it's something I've been doing for years. And why did I start it? Because again, you're looking at a person with privilege. I am a person who works in the entertainment business. Mike, you know this, we talked about this. I haven't gotten a check in 8 months. I have not made a check in my industry in 8 months.
I know.
Thank God for partners like the Indiana Black Expo, Tanya Bell coming alongside to help me do things, because I still understand my privilege, not in 2020, but from 1990, I've been blessed and fortunate to be able to make a difference, to be able to pick up a phone and speak to Michael Huber, and he grants me this opportunity to share some of my story, but also impact on people that we all have a responsibility. Absolutely. We all are Americans. We all are equal. We all born with the same blood. You know, I'm a Christian, but I love Jewish people. I'm a Christian, but I love Muslims. I'm a Christian, but I love atheists. At the end of the day, until you give me a reason other than my skin color to dislike me, then it ain't nothing wrong with Black people. Yeah. Something is wrong with those white people who are intimidated and live in fear of equality and equity coming to reality.
Man, I'm gonna put up the graphic on in a second. Lisa J, hold 1 second. Again, Mamie Ware, thank you, Ron Miner, Jennifer Deswaner from Borshoff, Tony Mason, president of Indianapolis Urban League, Allison Melanchthon from Mount Rushmore and the Indianapolis Motor Speedway. Thank you for your kind comments. Debbie Wilson, thank you, Debbie, from engaging. So I do want people to know, again, we may have to turn this into a regular series, Amp, just for all the people writing in. They need to do like conversations with Amp Harris, because there's so many more things to talk about. But I think people really, and because I do, you've had a big impact on me, and I think people very much. Somebody says you should do this on a regular basis. I think people. I sense a hunger out there for real conversation that's not censored by the media, and it's not the political dialogue. And I do believe, I know that our city and our country have so much work to do. The last year has exposed how much work there is to do. And yet I have to believe that people are drawn to and have a hunger for conversation that's real. And being able, like if you're a white person in a position of privilege, to make a contribution that's real. And I do want to, Lisa, let's put the graphic up there on the toy giveaway, because this has become a huge event at AMP. I mean, you've basically bootstrapped it. Can you zoom on that, Lisa, a little bit so people know where to go? John Thompson, thanks for the comment. Sam Odell, thank you. Let's see if we can zoom in a little bit here in the next. But AMP, can you talk about how this started, and then the partnership with Indianapolis Motor Speedway while we're figuring out how to zoom in?
Oh yeah, I can answer all those questions. That's easy for me, Mike. Everything else was hard. Basically, it started years ago, man. I've always given back. You know, when I was on the radio, man, I started so many traditions of giving back again, because I don't forget where I come from. You know, I'm not someone who is going to pretend that he's in corporate America, because I'm not. I'm just somebody who has been blessed with an opportunity and a platform, and I've always just morally tried to do things the right way. And I was taught by my mother, Geneva, to whom much is given, much is expected. And so, you know, my resources with my athlete friends, entertainer friends, it's not based on money. A lot of people think that, oh, all these athletes are part of what AMP does and they're giving him money. I don't ask athletes for money. I don't ask entertainers for money. I don't ask anybody for money. Tony Mason, my brother from the Urban League, would tell you, we just talked about this yesterday. So, you know, probably about 15, 16 years ago, if not longer than that, I was doing toy giveaways on the radio station. And, you know, I started doing them with my attorney, Nathaniel Lee, and I started doing things with my pastor, my big brother, Jeffrey Johnson at Eastern Star Church. And I've just always done these things. And so, you know, maybe like 5 years ago, it started, I just had this 5, 6 years ago, this notion one day to just adopt 300 kids. I don't know any of these families. And you know, I did it and it turned into 500. And then ever since then, it's been my commitment to adopt 1,000 kids to just help take pressure off of single parents. I know what it's like. I know what it was like being the youngest. And my mother, every year for Christmas, it was something, you know, and I'm thankful for that. And so I'm in a position to be able to do things myself. But people start telling me, Amp, you know, you got to stop trying to take on these financial burdens on your own. But I'm one, Mike, that I share with you. Even in this climate, I don't believe in letting people give me money to dictate how I do what I do.
Right.
You know, because just because you write a check doesn't mean you believe in service. And I'm one who believes in service. There are people that are capitalists and there are people that are service people. I'm a service person. And everybody that writes a check is not a service person. Some people say, my company is the reason, blah, blah, blah. No one would ever say that about AMP Harris. So the AMP Harris Foundation, which I just started back up this year because of everything that has been going on, and it has prompted me to really push harder to use my AMP Harris Foundation to really do more work in the communities, to go in and we focus on just underprivileged. And if that means, you know, education, food banks, helping kids get mentorships, all of those things, that's what I'm going to do. And that's what my heart is. So for people who want to donate and help, you can go to my website, which is ampharrisfoundation.org, ampharrisfoundation.org, and you can see all the information. Shout out to the Indianapolis Motor Speedway for allowing me to be able to share an experience with families that would never probably get a chance to go on the track, let alone on the grounds. And also you can, you know, all of my social media platforms, Mike, all of them are under AMP, A-M-P Harris, Harris.
So people will get, everybody who registered for this virtual town hall this morning will get this information in the follow-up email. And AMP, I see that people can drop off unopened toys at Indianapolis Motor Speedway Museum and can support with financial. Okay, sorry. Okay, sorry.
So I'm gonna send you the updated flyer. So
okay, great.
You know, because of COVID reasons, you know, we decided to change that. But people go, no, that's just old flyer. That's perfectly fine. We're good. So you know, people will pick up the toys if they send me information. If they want to drop them off, I'll set up, you know, places and I'll come and get them. I literally go shopping myself, Mike, for these families. I enjoy it. I spend probably 8 hours in Meyer and I shop. Me and some of my friends, we shop for all of these kids, man. So this is my heart, man. It almost kind of gets me emotional to talk about this stuff.
Well, based on the messages I'm getting, we're gonna have to turn this into a regular thing. If you would be so honored, you're gonna get super busy when the concerts heat back up, hopefully in 2021. But you know, you're being very kind. AMP, the honor is really ours to get you in front of many of our members and our business owners. You know, you've lived such a fascinating life, but I think you know, one of the real powerful things that comes through is you you're using your platform to make a lot of kids and a lot of families happy, and also to use a lot of, you're taking all these relationships that you have and really pushing people to think differently. I think it's making a difference. It's inspiring a lot of us to really look at our own behaviors, look at our own relationships. And before we end the program, hey, as we head into the end of the year, what do you have any parting kind of closing thoughts for our audience today?
Yeah, man. One, understand who you are as a person. First and foremost, I wouldn't be where I'm at. I'm at mentally. It's 2 points. First, learn to love yourself, because if you don't love yourself, there's no way you can love anybody else. You can, I tell you this, Mike. I live my life on a practicality of happiness versus joy. Happiness is all external stuff. Joy is what you do, what derives from you from the inside. So, if you learn to do that, I think you'll be able to see things from a different lens. You won't see race, you'll just see people. You won't see, social economics. You'll just see people where they live, and you no longer will become judgmental based on privilege. You no longer will become judgmental based on statistics. And we got to get rid of this notion that because I'm fighting for Black Lives Matters, that doesn't mean your life doesn't matter. That doesn't mean the police life doesn't matter. What that means is my life matters. And
Yep.
if you cannot look at the inequalities of what's going on in life when we look at Black versus white, and if you sit in a room and you can try to use your privilege, or you can use socialist ideas to justify your actions, then you might be part of the problem.
Yeah.
Because what we're talking about
Yeah.
is humanity at the end of the day. So let's
Yeah.
learn to love one another as human beings, not as the race and the color of our skins, not our economic, not our education backgrounds, none of these happy things that we
Yeah.
derive from. Stop thinking of yourself because you graduated from college or you're president of an organization that you are better than the homeless person. You
Yeah.
just got a better opportunity than the homeless person.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
learn to love one another. Learn to understand that we are one, which is my slogan. No matter how you look at this thing, we are one. Mike Hubert, I thank you, man, for having me on here.
Thank
I
you.
never think that what I say, really impacts people that way. But if I did, those are people who want to be impacted. And that's how I look
Yeah.
at it. And so
Yeah.
reach one, teach one, reach one.
It really does. And for those of you tuned in, thank you. I mean, based on this has been one of the most popular virtual conversations we've had. We've been doing them every other day since March, Amp. So we'll have to have you back. And I just want to thank you for the influence that you're having on the community, on me personally. I look forward to future conversations. Please, if you're looking for a way to meaningfully impact a child's life or a family's life, support the December 19th annual Amp Harris toy giveaway. We'll be following up with the flyer with the updated information. Just want to thank everybody for taking time out this morning. So many nice comments in the chat. Amp Harris, we'll definitely have you back. Thank you so much.
Mike.
I appreciate it. Everybody have a good day.